Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's so good to see you once again. For those who are here for the first time, my name is Sean Anderson. I am the assistant pastor at the Hanson Place Church of Seventh-day Adventists. And must I say, dare I say, we're happy to see you. We're happy to have you. I would like to ask you to do me a favor. Please, before you do anything else, I want you to go ahead, if you're on Facebook, share this broadcast. And also make sure that you like the Hands of Place AYM page. If you're on YouTube, I want you to just share and just send this out to as many persons as possible so that they can know that great things are happening right here at the Hands of Place Youth Ministries social media pages. This evening, we will be talking about the shift. And what this will be focused on is where we are coming from as a people, where we are as a people, and where we are going as a people. And the emphasis, of course, will be based around the month in which we are in, Black History Month. I have a wonderful group of people with me this evening. Now, see, I'm not an expert on this subject matter, but I have folks here who are, wonderful people who know about the subject matter, who know about the struggles of our people, and who are on the ground fighting for our people. And you'll get to learn a little bit about them a little bit later as I will have them introduce themselves. But I just want to welcome you again, and just want to ask you to please share this broadcast so that we can get this word out to as many persons as possible. I want to invite you to bow your heads with me. We're going to have a word of prayer, and then we're just going to jump right into it. Father in heaven, thank you so much for being here. Bless every word that will come out of our mouth this afternoon. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. As I said, I am here with some great panelists, and I'm going to give them a chance now to introduce themselves, just to share with you a little bit about the work that they're doing and a little bit about who they are personally. And I also want them to answer a question for me as well. I want them to answer, when they share who they are, about somebody in their life, somebody of African American or African descent, Black or brown person who has been instrumental in molding them to make them the person that they are today. They say ladies before gentlemen, they say beauty before age. So I'm going to begin with Brittany. Brittany, talk to the folks, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here today. So my name is Brittany Kerr, and I'm a criminal defense attorney in the District of Columbia. I have been working in law since roughly 2017, and I've specifically been working in DC court systems since 2019. So I really enjoy that. I really enjoy being able to advocate for my clients when oftentimes they don't have somebody that can really speak to their needs and represent and advocate for them. As far as my personal life, when I'm not doing law, I like to create. I'm a content creator on Instagram. I like to sing. I like to do skits. What else do I like to do? Share any inspirational words. And I feel like that kind of balances my life and helps me maintain my focus on God, and recognizing that at the end of the day, anything I do, whether it's in the court or outside of the court, it's really to bring honor to God's name. So as far as influential people in my life, I would say the person that got me thinking about advocacy for the Black community was my mom. I mean, from a young age, she had me watching Eyes on the Prize, probably younger than I should have been because it was so dramatic. But she's the one that really was influential in making sure I knew my Black history. Then through learning about Black history, I was introduced to Thurgood Marshall. And as you all know, he was an influential attorney. He fought very important cases, such as Brown v. Board of Ed. And just reading his books, learning more about him, it inspired me to dedicate my life to doing this. And I think God had his plans all along, but Thurgood Marshall and others like him kind of opened my eyes to the awareness that this could be a part of my purpose as well. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to the program.
Hey, thank you so much, Brittany. And I've known Brittany ever since she was a little girl. And look at it now; she's grown up to be a lawyer, which means one, she's grown and flourishing. Two, I'm getting old. You can see my little specks of gray coming in there. But Brittany,
I
I
know,
want
I
to
saw that.
you saw that, right? I am so proud. I am so proud of you. I really am. It's good to see when you watch somebody grow and flourish to be where you are today. I am really proud. As I sit here in this chair, I am so proud. Can I say I am proud to be of African descent? I'm proud to be a black man in America. I'm proud. I'm proud. But let's keep going. Less about me, more about the cast. Tim, tell us about yourself.
All right. Good afternoon, Pastor Anderson. Thank you for having me. And good afternoon to Attorney Brittany Kerr and Dr. Sidney Freeman. I'm honored and humbled to be part of this program today. And hello to everyone in the listening audience. So, my name is Timothy Golden. Please call me Tim. I've been called a lot worse, believe me. I am professor of philosophy, legal studies program coordinator, and founder of the Donald Blake Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity, and Culture at Walla Walla University. For approximately 20 years, I was a criminal defense attorney in and around Philadelphia in state and federal courts, handling trials and appeals. I decided to go back to graduate school to pursue my first love, which was philosophy. And so in 2011, I graduated from the University of Memphis with my PhD in philosophy. And for the past 10 years, I have been uh, a philosophy professor. And here at Walla Walla University, I was hired and recruited to come here to begin a minor program in legal studies, which I did. And along the way, was blessed and inspired to, along with the cooperation and support of President John McVeigh and the leadership team of the university, found the Donald Blake Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity, and Culture. Donald Blake was the first African American to hold a full-time teaching position at a majority white Adventist university. And he did that here at Walla Walla University in the 1960s. So we have a center here in his name, and I was blessed and humbled to play a role, significant role in the center's founding. Uh, as far as people who, I'm also a proud graduate of the Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas. Like Brittany, I am inspired by Thurgood Marshall, and I think it's so hard, Pastor and my fellow panelists, to come up with just one person who has inspired me. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to talk. There's so many. I mean, I could talk about Barbara Jordan, who's a graduate of Texas Southern University and went on to graduate from Boston University School of Law, like Attorney Kerr. I could talk about Ida B. Wells, right, and her courage as a journalist and what she did to expose the horrors of lynching. But I think I would have to say the man who hangs on the wall behind me, who you may be able to see in the picture, is none other than Charles Hamilton Houston. Thurgood Marshall would tell you, if he's being honest, and he often was known for his brutal honesty, that he would never have been who he was were it not for the legal mentoring of Charles Hamilton Houston. So he was the architect behind the legal strategy that systematically dismantled Jim Crow in the 20th century. And so his portrait behind me inspires me as I sit here in my home office, whether it's teaching my classes or doing any work to improve the conditions for marginalized people, whether it be as a lawyer or academic. He really has been an inspiration to me. And the other person who I would say is August Wilson, the African American playwright who penned 10 plays about Black life in the 20th century. It's called his Century Cycle. The most important work that I do is work as an actor, which I've been unable to do during the pandemic for obvious reasons. But I long for the day when I can get back to the stage and tell stories that have been told by August Wilson. My goal as an actor is to perform in all 10 of his plays about Black life in the 20th century. I've performed in 3, so I've got 7 more to go, and I look forward to that. Outside of those 2 men, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my father, who was a fine example of Black manhood and made me into the person that I have become today. So I'm grateful for him too. So thank you. And I look forward to the discussion.
Tim, thank you so much. And viewers, you can see the wealth of knowledge, but not only the wealth of knowledge, but the passion. So far, you've seen it in Brittany, you've seen it in Tim, the passion that is deep within their souls for what they do. And I'll say it again, I feel so proud to sit here because sometimes you just see the negativity and you know, I just want young boys and girls growing up to see and know that there are people that look like them who have been and continue to do great things in this world. So Tim, thank you so much for sharing. Last but not least, Dr. Sidney Freeman Jr. Doc, talk to the people about yourself, some of the things you're doing, and who inspires you.
Well, first, I want to say thank you so much, Pastor Anderson, for this opportunity. It's always good to have opportunity to speak to the people. So I'm originally from Camden, New Jersey, but now I serve as an associate professor at the University of Idaho. One of the other things that during the pandemic I've been able to do is start a couple businesses. So one business is Dr. Freeman LLC, which is my educational consulting firm. But then there's the other spiritual side where I've been hosting monthly conversations on my platform to talk about decolonizing the black mind. And so that organization is called the Liberation Movement. And our mission is to provide services to those who have been liberated or seek to be liberated mentally, spiritually, and socially through educational initiatives. And when I think about 2 individuals, because I can't stick to just one, the 2 individuals that have been very impactful in my career and in my work. One is Dr. Nat Irvin. Many people may not know that name, but he is a Black futurist. And he's the first person to help push me to think about Black people and our impact into the future. Generally, we have conversations about how we survive the next 5 to 10 years. But where are we as Black people in the year 3000, right? And so he helped me to think of not just surviving, but thriving. And so he's had a profound impact on my career. And the second person is Dr. Owen Troy Sr. I've been blessed with the honor of serving as the official biographer for Dr. Owen Troy, which is the first person in the Adventist Church to earn a doctorate of theology. And it happens to be an African American man from California. And so his inspiration of being able to navigate different environments has been one that I've sought inspiration from, be able to bridge being in white context, but being able to serve our people. So those are 2 individuals that have had a profound impact on my life and career.
Mm. Dr. Sidney, thank you so much for sharing that. Again, you know, folks, what I want you to see here is that there is passion, there is depth to what these panelists will bring to the table this afternoon. You are in good hands. And I want to ask you again, if you haven't done so, make sure that you share this program on your news feed if you're on Facebook. Why? Because what you're going to get here, I don't think you'll be able to find it anywhere else. So make sure that you share it. If you're on YouTube, send out the link to your friends and family members. And I'm going to be a little bit biased here, especially if you're from Connecticut, if you're from the Hope Church. Let folks know that Brittany is on Facebook right now. So let's get into this. You know, I'm going to read for you a quote from this gentleman here, Austin Cheng. And my producers, if you could put up the image here. And I just want to get your feedback. We're just going to start out with this. I always like to start out with controversial things. That's just how I am. And then we just ease into the evening. So he said this, and this is coming from the website blackenterprise.com under the title, Black Candidate in Michigan Governor's Race Proposed to Cancel Black History Month. And this is what he says. He said, quote, "I will cancel Black History Month in Michigan. It's offensive, unfair, maybe illegal. Americans from all Black backgrounds deserve a revered history. I'll declare American History Month." End of quote. Now, my fellow panelists, when you hear this, I don't know what side of the fence you're on. I don't know if you're on the side of the fence to cancel Black History Month. I don't know if you're on the side of the fence to keep Black History Month. But I want to hear, well, you know what? Hold off. Before I get to the panelists, my fellow family on Facebook and on YouTube, do you believe that Black History Month has become irrelevant and should be canceled? Folks, blow up the comment section right now. What do you think? Should Black History Month be canceled? Do you agree with this Andrew Chang that's running for governor? Let me go with Dr. Freeman. I ended with you. Let me pick up with you. Then I'll go to Tim. Then I'll pull in Brittany. What's your stance on this? Has Black History Month serves no purpose, should be done away with? All people matter, all lives matter. Therefore, let's get rid of Black History Month. What do you think? Where are you on this spectrum?
I always think about when we celebrate other communities, we never preface it by asking, is it relevant? Is it needed? I think about when people ask if historically Black colleges are still relevant and things like that. I actually take umbrage and offense to even the idea that when we celebrate Black contributions, there should be a question. And all we're doing is highlighting during the month and amplifying the work that Black people have done. But we celebrate Black people every month, and so I think that it's relevant, it's needed, and yes, in semantics, yes, it's, we're all Americans and all that good stuff, but there is something special about setting time aside to celebrate our people. I think about it in the context, if we even look at it from the context of the Sabbath, right? And so we theoretically can worship on any day, right? But we have the Sabbath day that God has set aside to highlight what he's done for us. And so what we're doing in the month of February is acknowledging the contributions of those of Black descent to this country and around the world. So I disagree with Mr. Chang in his perspective around the elimination of Black History Month.
Thank you so much, Doc. Tim, where do you stand on this? Is this month irrelevant and even made a statement illegal because we shouldn't be highlighting one group of people? What say you?
Well, I want to say that I strongly disagree with any notion of canceling Black History Month. What I find to be especially disturbing and somewhat arrogant is that this person is running for governor and wants to use his political power, if he gets it, to cancel Black History Month. But I'm not so sure how one politician can cancel thousands or hundreds and hundreds of years of recognizing history. I mean, it's almost as though he thinks that just because he makes a declaration as governor, that Black people will stop celebrating Black History Month in February. That's silly. Dr. Carter G. Woodson started Black History Week
Mhm.
from the need to recognize the contributions of African Americans to history, right? To American history. I find it fascinating that on one hand, he would oppose Black History Month, but on the other hand, talk about the need for American history. Well, Mr. Chang, you can't talk about American history without talking about Black history, right? The two are intertwined together. I think that this remark from this political candidate in Michigan, is it, Pastor? Is this where?
Michigan, and this is a Black man
Right.
making these
So,
statements. This is
so
not a
and this is the kind of person that white people love, because he's a Black face that agrees with them. And let me just say one last thing about this. A, I disagree. B, I have serious doubts if any gubernatorial declaration would be able to somehow eliminate Black History Month. And finally, I think as Christians, both Black and white, the any attempt to eliminate history is antithetical to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Mm,
We serve a God who is so interested in history that he intervened to deliver the children of Israel from Pharaoh's Egypt. We serve a God that's so interested in history that he intervened to protect the Hebrew boys in the fiery furnace. We serve a God who's so interested in history that he who is eternal became historical in the person of Jesus Christ in order to save us. So, if as Christians we purport to serve a God who is this interested in history, what does that say of our attempts as Christians to erase history?
mm.
If we are trying to erase history, we are thus working at cross purposes with God. And when you work at cross purposes with God, you're his adversary. And the word Satan means adversary.
Mhm.
So don't talk to me about canceling Black history, because when you talk to me about that from a Christian standpoint, you're talking about erasing what is at the very foundation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that, to me, is completely unacceptable.
Mercy, mercy. Tim, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just wondering, is there anybody on here that disagrees so far with Dr. Freeman, and disagrees with Tim so far, to say, you know what, you guys don't know what you're talking about. We need to just get rid of this. Is there anyone who disagrees? Brittany, where are you on this?
Well, I don't totally disagree with Mr. Chang.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah, there's shock value for you, Sean.
They're getting the
I
stones, by the way. They're getting the stones
all
from
right.
the back, and the nails and the cross. We're coming. Talk to me, Brittany.
I think that in some sense, he's right. Black History Month is offensive, unfair, and maybe illegal. It's offensive to feel that you can honor a people within only 1 month of the year that have dedicated their history, past, resources, ancestral line to building your country, and to not appreciate them 11 months out of the year. It's definitely offensive. It's also unfair that the full depth of our history and our contribution to America has not been taught and or fully acknowledged by American society as a whole. And yeah, it should be illegal to treat Black Americans as second-class citizens for 11 months out of the year. I would argue 12 months out of the year, and then throw them a bone for 1 month and say, oh, you guys should be happy with this recognition. And we all know from growing up in school systems that very often the full depth of our history isn't even taught to us. We have to learn that when we get to college, the full contribution of what we've done to society. So I agree with him, but I diss it for different reasons. I think that Black History Month is not enough. And I think for so long for Black Americans, we've been given this month and it's been sort of pacifying us. And there really does need to be a larger conversation. There needs to be some serious sacrifice on the part of larger white America to really make reparations for what has been done to the Black community. And 1 month isn't going to satisfy us anymore. And I think as long as we keep on pushing it over year after year, it's just going to keep bubbling and bubbling until we have a crisis on our hands in regard to racial unity in America.
Can I jump in?
Sure, Doc. Go ahead.
I think one of the things that we have to navigate, right, is ethnicity is a part of this conversation, a silent part of this conversation. So my understanding is he's of Nigerian descent, and his perspective may be shaped by his familial line, right? And so his perspective on how the U.S. Is to Black people is shaped by his own American experience. So I am a African American descendant of slaves. So my perspective is through my thinking about, my great grandparents and what they fought and died for. And so, as someone said in the chat, they said that they didn't give us a month. We had to fight for a month. So if we go back to Carter G. Woodson with having a week, well, we just had a week, and now we fought for a month, right? So it wasn't anything that was just given to us. It was fought for. And so I think we have to kind of wrestle with this representation. Why are people embracing certain people with certain backgrounds to represent Black people, particularly from the conservative side, right? Because it may align more with their ideology regarding putting Black people in their place. So I think those are things that we have to really be thoughtful about.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and you're right, Dr. Freeman, because let me be honest with you, because I spent half my life pretty much growing up in the Caribbean and half my life living in the United States. And I came up here in my late teens, and I kept asking myself, what is wrong with these African Americans? Why they can't just pull themselves up from the bootstraps and just, because you see, where I came from in Jamaica, I couldn't understand, because you see, when I'm in Jamaica, my representation are people that look like me. I don't have people flying Confederate flags. I don't have that level of, there is prejudice there, but I don't experience the level of discrimination that folks experience up here. As a matter of fact, when I first came here, I was kind of naive to what racism was. That's the honest truth. I can't speak for any other Jamaican, so please, folks, I'm not speaking for any other Jamaican, but I was a bit naive to what racism was. As a matter of fact, my first introduction to this type of treatment was when I went for my first job. When I went for my first job, there was a big help wanted sign on the window. And when I went inside, it was a Caucasian gentleman. The man told me he wasn't hiring. And his wife looked at him, she gave him like a dirty look because the big help wanted sign was on the window. And I got hired there because of his wife. And I remember the man told me point blank, and I was so shocked. The man said, he found out I was from Jamaica. He said, I don't like Jamaicans because y'all come up here and steal our women. That's what he said to me. I was like 16, 17. I was thrown aback. Never was I treated like that. So you're right in that when you come from somewhere else, we come with a different perspective, and we have to be humble enough to learn about the struggle, and be humble enough to at some point say, you know what, Tim, you know what, Brittany, you know what, Sydney, there's some things about this thing that I don't understand, but I will try. That's where we need to be as a people. Now, let me ask you, you folks, something now. For me, as I look throughout the years, as a matter of fact, between the last 2 years for me, maybe 3 years, I would say, and I have seen more consciousness of the Black struggle. Again, I haven't been here all my life, but for me, I have seen more consciousness, and it's not really for good reasons. It's due to police brutality has been pushing more consciousness of what's going on here. What about you guys? Have you experienced any? Have you experienced that people are becoming more conscious of the Black struggle here in America, or do you find that it's still the same? I don't know. Who wants to jump in and take it first?
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead, Brittany.
So in my understanding, it's not so much that people are more conscious as much as they're being forced to acknowledge it. So I think with Trump, I mean, he epitomized just sort of the ugly root of racism that sort of permeates throughout America, particularly throughout white America on all different economic levels. And he just brought it to the forefront. And so people, I think, are more repentant and acknowledging because I think they sense that there's a movement happening, and if they want to be on the right side of history. It's like likewise when, similar to how when Pence finally acknowledged, the election. It's not that I thought that he didn't know the whole time. It's just that he has something to lose by not jumping on the right side of history. And I think a lot of white people are feeling that way. And that's not to say that white people and middle-class white people, a lot of them are consciously aware of their racism, but they do sense a sort of indignation when they feel that you are advancing ahead of them. And now they're beginning to see that mindset is not only being called out, but it's sort of being, they're being held accountable for it. So it's more of like, so it's less to do with being more conscious and more to do with feeling like there's no more hiding.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Brittany.
Yeah, I really like the way that Attorney Kerr, that Brittany just really framed this, because I think you see it because you can't help but see it now, right? And between the Obama presidency, which enraged white people for 8 years, right? That they had to see a competent, capable, classy African-American man in the White House, and end up electing the total opposite in 2016, right? And a white man who is incompetent, not classy, right? Racist. And you started to see the proliferation of violence against unarmed Black people toward the tail end of the Obama administration. You saw it in halfway through Obama's second term with Michael Brown. Really, back in 2012, you go all the way back to Trayvon Martin, right? And you begin to see, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, and then it just continues and it steamrolls. And I think what Brittany said just a moment ago is so important, because it isn't as though the consciousness of Black suffering is being recognized because we see it as a moral problem.
Mm.
It's being recognized because it's replayed before our very eyes every day. Whether it's someone calling the police on a little Black girl selling water in the Bay Area in San Francisco, or watching George Floyd die on video, or Philando Castile, or take your pick. Um, you know, we see it and it's in front of us. And I don't think that we should put too much stock just into an increased consciousness. What are the implications of that consciousness, and what do we do with it now that we are aware of it? Do we use it in a constructive way to pursue meaningful public policy changes, or do we just shrink from it because we don't really want to see it anymore? And I think that's where we sort of find ourselves right now. I'm always suspicious of what happens when a grassroots movement gets large corporate backing.
Mm.
And as much as I support Black Lives Matter as a concept and as an organization, I think what has happened to the Black Lives Matter movement, in part, is what happened to Christianity when Constantine converted.
Mm.
Constantine understood that the only way to really stop Christianity was to co-opt it.
Mm-hmm.
That if he could co-opt the gospel for his own political and military ends and end the persecution and begin to give the church lots of money, that the church would stop to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And it would become fashionable to be a Christian. In the same way, Black Lives Matter begins as this robust, grassroots, social and political movement. But now, when it's emblazoned on basketball courts in the NBA, when NFL players are now apologizing to Kaepernick and owners are recognizing messages like end racism and so forth, is that really done because they're acknowledging that racism is morally wrong? Or is it being done because wealthy corporate sponsors have threatened to withdraw their support for NFL franchises or NBA franchises? And so I'm concerned that when you make those kinds of contributions to a social movement, they can end up doing more harm than good. And I think that the Black Lives Matter movement as an organization, not the concept, right? Not the concept, not the slogan, but as an organization has some pre-existing problems. Maybe I can talk about that later. And those problems are exacerbated by what has become its popularity induced from these wealthy corporate donors that have done to the movement what Constantine did to Christianity. Destroyed it by slowing it down and accepting it and embracing it.
Have mercy. That's what you just shared is so powerful. I mean, I have to take some time to digest what you're saying. But but that's the way you infiltrate and kill something from the inside. Doc Freeman, you have anything you want to add to this, to what has been said?
Yes. So I think, well, I'll just say what Tim just shared was extremely profound. We kind of moved away. One of the things that that I appreciate about what's happened in this moment in the last probably 6 years has been this veneer of just representation, having someone in a particular place that happens to share your same same color, that's not enough, right? So there's a critique of Obama. There's a critique of some of our leaders of black major cities. There's a critique of their effectiveness in these roles and understanding systemic racism, right? What we started to see was there was kind of this push to be a class push where you wanted to move up in class standing. And what's happened now with seeing Tamir Rice, and you can go down the list, right? We can see students that were in college at Yale, for instance, right, profiled in their own space. And during these times now, we see that my class won't shield me from racism, right? What I wear is not respectability politics, as we would call it, is being called out. So I think in another way, because I'm focusing in on kind of black people's response to it, is that I think we now understand that. Let me say this: when I was talking about the different ethnicities, I think those that were people thought that because I had a particular accent, right? When I would use my accent and then I would get out of the situation because I'm not Black American, right? Well, you're seeing that sometimes they don't know if you're from the Caribbean or you're from Africa. They're just responding to your skin color. So all of these things have allowed for Black people to kind of step back and think about how we can partner with one another and kind of see racism for what it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doc. I want to ask a question now, because a lot of times we see things on paper, and I really want to get an honest answer. Brittany and Tim, I'm going to lean on you more for this answer, but Doc Freeman, feel free to jump in as well. Now, parents, I want you to grab, if your children, especially teenage children, as a matter of fact, it don't even matter. Grab your children, sit down, because this question I'm going to ask, I would like for Brittany and Tim, if they have any experience, to bring the reality from the paper, bring it from the paper to reality, so to speak. Now, studies after studies that I've seen is showing that there's almost, well, the term that's being used is almost like there's a different legal system for Blacks than whites. And studies after studies that I've gone through is showing that when a Black person commits a crime and a white person commits the same crime, the prison sentence for the Black person is longer than the white person. Now, for me, those are just words on paper. Brittany, I know you're in the system. Tim, I know you said you practice law for a little bit. And Doc Freeman, I know you're on the ground in the fight. I want you to explain to the people, is this true? Is this real, or is this just words on paper? And folks on YouTube, folks on Facebook, I want you to weigh in on this. Do you believe that there's a different justice system or different standard of justice for Black versus whites in America? Do you believe that it is so, or do you believe that it's one equally fair system? Brittany, let me begin with you. Tim, you can follow up, or Tim, in any order. Anyone, as a matter of fact, anyone wants to jump in first and take a stab at this.
I was about to say, you're putting me on the spot, but anybody, I have an answer, but anybody can go.
Go ahead, Brittany. Go ahead. All
right. So there's levels to this. So on a basic level, the answer is yes. There's a system of justice for white people, and there's a system of justice for Black people. Now, if you were to walk into DC court tomorrow, you would probably not see a lot of unfair judges. You would see a lot of fair judges. I've been before judges, and they seem to really be doing their best to get the best outcome for the client, give him resources he needs to get him through. So it's not as easy as being able to go into a courtroom and say, oh, you arrested this guy, you didn't arrest this guy, you charged this guy, you didn't charge this it's so complicated because the whole system is corrupt, right? So it might not be on any individual judge, police officer, attorney, witness, whatever. It's the whole system as a whole. Now, I will explain for myself working in Chocolate City. It's not so much that there's a different system, because if a white person were to commit assault, he would be under the same law, the same sentence. If they would consider his criminal record just the same as they would consider a black person's criminal record. The problem is that in a lot of our justice systems, black people and white people aren't in the same justice system. By and large, white people are not getting arrested in DC for the same charges and on the same level that black people are. And it could be because of the population that's coming through DC, right? The working class population in DC is black, right? And so more of the working class white people, they're not here. The white people here are more upper to middle class, right? So with that said, there's going to be different crimes that they may be committing. You might see tax evasion or things like that. So the first problem is that they're not in the same system to begin with, right? Then there's the second issue of police discretion, right? So there's the same laws. Technically, they're supposed to be meted out in the same way, but there's police discretion on who you are going to arrest and who you're not. And I am happy to report that I was able to see the huge difference in discretion of who's arrested and who's not by comparing the arrest list and the type of charges that were charged for BLM protests back in the summer of last year versus the type of people in charges that were arrested in the recent insurrection against the Capitol, right? So back in the summer, all that's true about there being more police harassing the protesters, that is true. There was more, they were just more guarded and more armed. And when you compare it to June 6th, whenever the Capitol protest happened, there was literally bare minimum police enforcement. And when I looked at the lockup charges, this is public information. Back in the summer, my clients were coming in for assault on the police officer, simple assaults. I mean, resisting arrest, serious charges, right? And I don't believe that all of those, are true and that there really was resisting arrest. I just think that those were the charges they felt that they could slap on them. Now, fast forward to January. Okay, what type of charges are they getting? Maybe violating curfew or unlawful entry. So if you guys I know I've been saying a lot of words, but the contrast between what type of charges the Black Matters protesters were getting and what type of charges protesters later on were getting, I think I can't say it was because of race or color. I can't point to any individual police officer, but I can say that they're not getting arrested for the same things. Not that they should, because I'm advocating for both, but I can see on a systematic level the difference. And then the last point is that again, there's a lot of fair judges. I've seen a lot of fair ones. But the point is, if you are putting people in conditions economically and socially where, one, they're more likely to have to engage in certain types of activities in order to even meet their own livelihood, if overall you have a country that is oppressing a certain amount of people, yeah, you're going to see an increase in rise in these types of offenses. But not only that, you then, I think what is happening is that there's also heavy police enforcement, whereas in other communities they're not as focused on it. So it's a lot, but I'll stop here.
Yeah, it's not a simple cut and dry answer. Thank you for sharing that, Brittany. I mean, one of the things that even today I still just cannot understand. When I looked at the attack on the Capitol, I mean, the amount of, little to no protection. I don't know if in their minds you're just saying, I don't know. Oh, I don't know if they're saying white folk will never do this. I don't know if that's. I mean, it's just. Go ahead. Tim.
Pastor. I think I think Brittany makes a good point, right? There are not literally two systems, but if you think about American history, and I wish our dear brother running for governor could hear this conversation because this is about American history, right?
Mhm.
The first slaves arrived at Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. From 1619 all the way up until the adoption of the Constitution in 1787, I believe, is about 168 years. During that 168-year period, the slave trade just carried on. And the ratification of the Constitution, which we celebrate as a document of freedom,
Mhm.
did not manumit one slave.
Mm.
Instead, what it did was it ensured that slavery would continue in the new nation. So when our framers of our government got together in Philadelphia, my hometown, in 1787, they got together and they decided that they were going to uh, start a new nation. But in order to do that, they could not free the slaves. They had to ensure that they remained enslaved.
Mm.
And it was such an embarrassment to the country that most good historians will tell you that America was founded twice. It was founded in 1776, and then for 11 years you had the Articles of Confederation. Then in 1787, the Constitution is adopted. And then during Reconstruction, we have to have three amendments: the 13th, the 14th, and 15th Amendment to deal with the problems associated with slavery. We have to abolish it in the 13th. We have to guarantee citizenship rights for natural born persons in the 14th Amendment. And we have to secure the right to vote, which, by the way, we're still fighting for today. I'll comment on that in a second. But the reality is that in 1857, when Supreme Court Justice Roger Taney said that Black people have no rights that whites are bound to respect, he was speaking the political reality of American racism. Now, we have tried to change that political reality with the Emancipation Proclamation, with civil rights legislation. We've tried to do it, and we have changed the letter of the law, but the spirit of Dred Scott is alive and well.
Mm.
And the disparities that we see in law enforcement that Brittany pointed to a moment ago are the direct result of living in a post-slavery world with a Dred Scott attitude.
Whoa.
We still have a Dred Scott attitude toward Black people, which is why we continue to see people have objections when Black people get arrested and charged with crime and get acquitted. It's going on 26 years since the O.J. Simpson verdict, right? And if you remember correctly, there were calls for reform to the criminal justice system from white people in the days, weeks, and months and few years following his acquittal. Why? Because if a Black person is in the system and it works the way it's supposed to, something must be wrong with the system. When it works for Black people, something has to be wrong, because the Dred Scott attitude says the system is there to marginalize and oppress Black people. This is the same attitude that President Trump took over the election. Whether it's Black people in Detroit, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Black and brown people in Phoenix, Arizona, who came out and voted, the election must be stolen. There has to be something wrong with it. He couldn't have lost, right? And the reason why he couldn't have lost is because Black people are not supposed to participate in American government. And it's not supposed to work for them. That's not the way it's supposed to work. So we ensured, as far as I'm concerned, in 1787, when we ensured the continuation of slavery, we ensured that there will always be two systems of justice in America, one for Black people and one for white people. And to Brittany's point, she makes a good one. Racism is not necessarily about individuals, it is about institutions. And you can plug good individuals into a bad institution, and the institution itself will still function in a way that oppresses Black people. So you could have good judges, you could have good police officers, you could have good prosecutors, but it's the way the system is worked, it's the way courts of law interpret constitutional provisions in a manner that is so restrictive that judges' hands are tied, right? So you might be a good judge, but if you're a trial judge and you have to apply a Supreme Court decision that tells you an arrest, search, and seizure has to be legitimate, or that you can't consider the officer's motivations, or if race was involved, then you're constrained to rule like that, right? So I do think we have two systems, and evidence of that is when it works for Black people, there must be something wrong with it. So we live in a post Dred Scott world where we have arguably changed the letter of the law, but sadly, the Dred Scott spirit is alive and well. And so we have two systems of justice, one for Black and one for white.
Thank you both so much for sharing. Can you believe we're running out of time? We're running out of time, but I want to switch the question. I just want to ask a couple more questions and then we'll close. There's a gentleman, he's somewhat of a controversial figure. I don't know if you guys know him, Dr. Umar Johnson. And what he usually says is that he doesn't care about, one good deed here and there. He cares about systematic change. And he always asks, what are the systematic changes that these leaders are doing for Black people? I want to begin with you, Dr. Freeman. What would you say as you scan through the history of our people? And then we're gonna put the rest of the questions to the future. But as you scan through history, what would you say has been the greatest systematic win for Black people?
That's a good question. I would say
if any.
I'm thinking about the Voting Rights. I'm thinking about the Voting Rights Act. I think about the Voting Rights Act just because just recently, when we think about the electoral process, we think about those like Stacey Abrams who were able to, in spite of Georgia and other states creating so many obstacles for people like you and me to have access to the vote, that we had access to the vote, even though there were all these things that were put in our way to do that. I think that it was important. Why I was pausing was because I was going through my mind as an educator. So my PhD is in education. Mm-hmm. So you're thinking about kind of integration of the schools, but in many ways it had in all of the advances that we made through our educational system by being integrated, there were some negatives to that with regards to having access to Black teachers and resources to Black schools, all those kinds of things. So I'll go with the Voting Rights Act, and with you guys knowing that from the education standpoint, there's kind of a checkered perspective on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doc. Now, I want to switch into where do we go from here. Now, when I look through history, and let me begin with the church in this segment. When I look through history, it's quite interesting, and I don't know if you folks see it, but you see in history, the church plays a very vital role on both sides. You have the church, the black church, fighting for the freedom of slaves, of freedom of well, let me say it more like this. You see it especially for me in the civil rights fight, the fight to the right to vote with Dr. King. You see the church there, but on the other end, the church was also there and were the people who were slave owners were churchgoers. I mean, so for us now, here's where I'm going with this. For us now, as a Seventh-day Adventist church, what role should the church be playing in the black struggle, if any? Should the church be totally hands-off approach, or should the church be actively involved in the struggle of our people? And folks,
I'm sorry.
Just a moment there, Tim. And folks on Facebook and YouTube, I want you to weigh in on this. What role should the SDA Church be playing now in the advancement of black and brown people here in the United States of America? Brother Tim, go ahead, sir.
Yes. So I have a couple of observations about that, Pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Every Seventh-day Adventist in the United States of America benefits from the African-American struggle for civil rights. There is a federal law, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prevents religious discrimination in the workplace, such that if you are a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, when you are confronted with the choice of having to either obey your conscience or keep your job, Title VII reflects a public policy against that. So your employer has an obligation, a legal obligation under federal law to accommodate your exercise of religion by giving you Sabbath off from work. Now, we know that and talk about that in the church in terms of religious liberty. But here's the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy of the church is that on the front end, during the civil rights struggles of the 1950s and 60s that led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended Jim Crow, the Seventh-day Adventist Church opposed involvement in protest movements. So the church on the front end told its members not to be involved in political protest, and then on the back end is the biggest beneficiary of the federal law that results from that protest.
Mm.
I want us to think carefully about how hypocritical and about how immoral that is. So I love it when I hear people say things like the church shouldn't be involved in politics. If you mean left or right, I agree. But you can't say on one hand the church shouldn't be involved in politics, and then on the other hand say, Pastor, do you have my Sabbath accommodation letter? You can't do that. Those two things they're inconsistent with one another. The church has always been involved in politics. For anyone who has a problem with the church's involvement in politics, consider that we have an entire department at the World Church devoted to public affairs and religious liberty. But because of our own racism, we have made it about religious liberty and less about public affairs.
Mercy.
Because if we make it about public affairs, we don't just have to address First Amendment violations of religious freedom. We have to address Fourth Amendment violations of civil rights. We have to address Fifth Amendment and Sixth Amendment and Eighth Amendment violations. See? And the problem is that the church going forward will always be divided on this issue because, like it or not, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is a uniquely American denomination founded in 1863 and formally organized in the midst of a civil war that was being fought over the question of what to do with 3.5 million Black people enslaved.
My Lord.
We can globalize the church all we want. We can tell our mission stories and we can talk of pastors being put in jail in Muslim countries. And I think all of that's fine. But the church, unless the church addresses the reality of African American, of anti-Black racism in its own ranks and in its own history, which I would argue the history of the church is inextricably bound with the history of African Americans. The people who stand on the hill and say, lo, this is our God, we have waited for him, he will save us. Who are they? They have been scapegoated. They have been socioeconomically disenfranchised. They won't be able to buy or sell. The people in our theological narrative, in our eschaton, are socioeconomically and theologically situated as Black people.
My God.
And so as we go forward, the church is involved in the political, whether we like it or not. Now, I'm not saying the church should be out there endorsing political candidates, but what I am saying is this, that there's politics with a small p, Democrat, Republican, etc. The church should shun that. But then there's the political. And by the political, I mean a community of persons arranged and organized under an authority that has the ability to make and enforce law. And when you define the political in those terms, you see the political from Genesis to Revelation. God organizing Adam and Eve, a community of persons under an authority that can make law, don't touch that tree, and can enforce it. If you eat from it, you're going to die. And even forward into Revelation, we speak of the kingdom of God. That's a political term. Seventh-day Adventist theology is inherently political because of its commitment to a prophetic interpretation of Daniel, which is in turn grounded in the succession of kingdoms. So the church is political. The church is engaged with the political. The theological and the political come together in the person of Jesus Christ, a colonized Jew from the ghetto of Nazareth, who was born in a smelly stable to a teen mother with a bad reputation and no health insurance. This is the reality of the gospel. So we can't help but be involved in the political, and any attempt to withdraw from that is both disingenuous and immoral.
Have mercy. Brother Tim, thank you so much. I mean, folks, I told you that this panel comes with a wealth of knowledge. I mean, I'm sitting here and I want to get up off my seat and jump around, but I'm trying to contain myself. And time is running out. That's the thing that's getting me. Time is running out. So Brittany and Doc Freeman, I'm going to ask both of you this question. This is going to be the final question for the evening. And Tim, maybe you can jump back in and we'll end with you. If somebody wants to get involved right now, somebody's watching, somebody says, you know what, I would like to get involved with helping my people move forward. What practical advice or suggestion would you give to them to get involved in this movement? Brittany, I'll go with you first, then Doc Freeman, and then Tim.
Sean, I really wish you would have sent me this question ahead of time so I could prepare.
No. I don't want you to prepare. Tell me what's, you see, here's the thing that we do here. Tell me what's on your heart.
Yeah.
When you look at your people and you see what's going on, I don't want a scripted answer. I want you to just tell me what's on your heart. What would you tell if a 16-year-old comes up to you on the street and says, you know, Brittany, I want to get involved. I don't want you to tell that 16-year-old, you know what, put a pause. Let me go prepare and come back. What would you say to that individual? Because you got to understand, there are people watching us right now. Some may be young, some may be old, and maybe sitting there right now and just wondering, you know, what's one thing that I can do to get involved? So something simple, doesn't have to be profound. What would you tell them?
Well, I would say start with internally working on yourself and allowing God to work on yourself or on you. The reason why I say that is because racism is really just a structure, but like the real condition has to deal with human hearts. And that's within the Black community and the white community. So there's two levels to dismantling racism. Is one, yes, we have to get the people that are in power to agree to give over some of their power and not ask for it back. But then we as a community also have to be prepared and in the right mental space to take advantage of these opportunities. So many of us are very broken, systematically broken down emotionally. I mean, mental health is rampant within our communities. A lot of us have come from broken homes. We need to get healthy, and we need to, one, go to God first to find out what his definition of health is, not what the world is saying, not all the rhetoric the world is saying about how to, dismantle racism. We need to go to God, get yourself right first, and then go out into your community. And everyone has different skill sets, You might be blessed to be an attorney or to be a speaker, a professor like Professor Golden, have the gift of speech and be able to move people with your words. You might have the gift like Dr. Freeman of being able to organize and teach and be an entrepreneur. You might have the gift of creativity. Ask God first how you can help the community. I think at the end of the day, it's ultimately going to be God that's going to put circumstances together to really allow Black people to be free. I hold on to that hope, just as I believe God ultimately orchestrated the Civil War, because white people were fighting for different reasons, but when they finished, they did what they needed to do. They let the Black people physically go, and I think that was an act of God. And I think 100 years later, right, I think was an act of God, some of the progress that came through with the Civil Rights Movement. And I believe that in this time, it's going to be an act of God. We can do all we want, but it's only going to be through God's power that we actually gain the victory. And one last note, I know that so the first thing is learn yourself, heal yourself from the trauma that you have, then go to God and ask how you can use your skills to help your community and the world at large. The third point that I will bring up is that there is an extremely anti-religious bent going on throughout the civil rights movement right now, or the just like Black Lives protest. Like, although there's a respect for religion, there's really this feeling of like, if you're religious, no, we don't want to deal with that. Stick to God. Like, we can't see God, but he is the orchestrator of it all. Don't let down your values and your belief systems to go along with the flow of what's popular right now, because it will not be sustainable. What will be sustainable is whatever is built on Christ. So I'll just leave that as a reminder.
Brittany Kerr, thank you so much for those words. You see why I ask you to just shh. That's heartfelt right there. That right there is what's on your heart. Tell the people how they can reach you one more time. For those who came in a little bit late, just give them your info real quick, and then I'll move to Dr. Freeman. And the same thing for you. You just give your closing thoughts. How can somebody practically jump on and just share with them how they can reach you? Same thing with Brother Tim. And then I have something at the end, so don't go anywhere. After they're done, we have some things at the end. Don't go anywhere. Brittany, just tell the folks how they can get in contact with you. Just very quickly, once again, what you do and how folks can get in contact with you if needed.
Okay. Thank you again for having me, Sean. This has been a great discussion and just a great contribution to the struggle that's happening right now. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the District of Columbia. You can reach me at my Instagram hold handler, which is BK Law Firm _LLC. You can reach out to me. I'd give my email, but it's extremely long. So if you want to contact me through there, any questions you may have, if you know someone that's in DC, they need representation or just advice for the next steps, I'm willing to offer that. Consultations completely free, so it doesn't matter. As far as what I like to do for ministry and serving God, I put that all on my more personal Instagram, lboogie1991. You don't have to follow me. It's not a plug, but if you do want to go and just see how I'm using my gifts to serve God, you're welcome to do that. Welcome to laugh. And yeah, guys, I hope you stay blessed.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for that. Hey, and she won't say, go and follow her. Go and follow her. And Brittany, I had to, all of this week, mentally tell myself, do not call her bougie. Do not call her bougie. Respect her in her professional field and call her Brittany. Again, I have known Brittany ever since she was a child. We used to call her bougie. I had to say, do not call her bougie. Do not call her bougie. All right. Doc Freeman.
All right. I want to build off of what Ms. Kerr has talked about. Last few weeks, God has been dealing with me from Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Be not conformed to the things of this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. When Ms. Kerr was talking about making sure you're whole before you go out and do some of these things, I feel like the next frontier of the work of social justice is not just fighting for policy change or practice change, but a transformation of our own minds. And so I think a part of that is a radical commitment to self-care, but also to care of our communities. So I'm one who actually believes that charity starts at home. So sometimes we try to save the whole world. And my perspective has been that what I've been called to is to minister to Black people, right? It doesn't mean that I don't help other people, but my commitment, my gifts, I am centering Black people as the group, largely because when you help Black people, the policies and practices helps everyone else, right? And so that is from the perspective that I come from. And so one of the things that I've learned that may be helpful to those who are watching this broadcast is that, when we think about social justice in the church, sometimes we feel like we have to do social justice in all spheres of our lives, right? And so one of the things that I've learned is that I can burn out if I'm trying to fight every issue in every space of my life. And so what I've done is said, in the academic space, in the social space, within my community, I invest my energy in fighting the good fight. As it relates to the church community, I have done some of that work, but I've had to say, well, many of our people, if they're reading the Spirit of Prophecy, if they're reading the Bible, if they're reading their Sabbath school lesson, right, they will know what's right and wrong. I don't have the same expectations for people out in the world. And so what I do is put my time and energy into fighting for justice outside of the church. So I know there are some that their commitment is fighting for justice inside the church. My passion and my gifts, I don't get me wrong, that I don't support the church, but my efforts, most of my efforts are if I am going to help the church, is targeted at helping Black people, not trying to educate white people about what's right and wrong when they clearly can get access to that. So if you want to get in contact with me, I have a new website, drsidneyfreemanjr.com. Again, drsidneyfreemanjr.com is a great place to access resources about both my ministry and also consulting in the area of educational leadership and beyond. So thank you again, Pastor Anderson, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for being here this afternoon, Dr. Freeman. We're truly blessed by you. And folks, please let us support our people. If his information is there on the screen right now, please take advantage of it. Write it down, take a screenshot, do what you have to do. Keep it. You never know when you might need Dr. Freeman's services. And let's just try to support each other, and let's try to build each other up. Sir Tim, talk to us. What would be your advice to someone? What's on your heart? And let the folks know how they can reach you if needed.
Well, again, thank you, Pastor. I just want to echo Dr. Freeman and Attorney Brittany Kerr in thanking you for this opportunity. I'm so humbled and blessed to be able to share with them on this panel. So thank you for that. I think that along with what Attorney Kerr said, I think before you involve yourself with anything, it's important to do a prayerful and thoughtful self-assessment of an inventory of precisely what your gifts are, right? What are your spiritual gifts? Because you have to, if your gift is organizing, the last thing you want to do is push yourself into being a public speaker, right? And if your gift is speaking, the last thing you need to be doing is agreeing to chair some committee, right? So it's, I think you have to really rely on God, and you have to commit to doing an honest inventory of what your spiritual gifts are, and then ask God how you can best put them to use. For a long time, I have been wanting to get involved in some meaningful public policy work, not only surrounding religious freedom, but also surrounding major legislation, right? So right now, Joe Biden is sort of getting a little bit of a free pass because he has to deal with COVID-19 relief. But after that's over, right, he's got to deal with the black folks that put him in office. And that means there has to be serious consideration of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which has a number of policy initiatives like ending qualified immunity, providing standards, uniform standards for training for police officers and so forth. And then there's also the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. You know, Dr. Freeman talked about the big win for African Americans being the Voting Rights Act in 1965. And I mean, I think I couldn't agree with him more. That's a huge victory. And now, if you think about it, we ratified the 15th Amendment in 1870, and here we are 151 years later trying to get back to where we were from 1965 to 2013. So the issues are urgent as it relates to these matters. So I would ask people or tell someone to start thinking about some grassroots efforts. I mean, we live in an information age, right? So it won't be difficult to find advocacy groups that are supporting major public policy initiatives on a national scale, but also Black people need to start thinking about ways they can get involved in their local community. Who's running for district attorney where you live, right? Because we can't just vote every 4 years in presidential elections. You know, who's going to be running for DA? Does the person running for DA, are they going to support a conviction integrity unit where they're going to work to uncover wrongful convictions of people in our community, right, who have been sentenced to lengthy prison terms because of intentional prosecutorial misconduct? There's something like that going on in my hometown in Philadelphia. That's a wonderful way to get involved. Are you going to go to candidate forums for district attorney and urge them to abandon the use of grand juries in police shooting cases so we don't end up with the mess that has been the Breonna Taylor debacle, right? Where we're still wondering, scratching our heads, well, what happened in the grand jury room? And grand jurors are filing for impeachment against the attorney general and so forth. So, you know, we have to start to think about these issues. And my advice to someone who wants to get involved is A, assess your talents and your capabilities, and B, put them to good use by joining with people, and C, realize that the people who you're joining might not be Adventists,
Mm-hmm.
probably won't be Adventists, right? And that's okay, because generally speaking, I think the church is fairly new to this. What I would urge local churches to do for folks that want to get involved is figure out ways to take your church departments and turn them inside out. Figure out ways to make community service and family life, for example, about things like trying to get criminal records expunged, which affect family life because people can't get jobs. And when you can't get jobs, you don't have money, and that affects the family, right? So we have to start to think about those things. So again, Pastor, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. And to Attorney Brittany Kerr, I'm just so honored and humbled to have met you. And Doc Freeman, you know how we do, man. I'm just humbled by your presence and being here with you. You can find me on Instagram. I confess, I'm not really a big Instagram person, but my handle there is A Good Golden Man. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. TJ Golden, ESQ. And my email is LOGOSTOSARX, Logos to Sarx. Pastor, I'm sure that you remember that from Greek. That's word to flesh at gmail.com. And my phone is listed there, 509-676-9093. Please text me first, because if you call and I don't recognize your number, I probably won't pick up. So send me a text first, and then we can have a chance to talk and get together. So again, Pastor, thank you so much. Attorney Kerr, Dr. Freeman, honored and humbled to be here. Thank you, Pastor.
I want to thank you. Thank you so much, Tim. And panelists, thank you so much. I want you to go ahead, give them some love, give them some thumbs up if you think that they did a wonderful job in the comment section. Once again, I want to thank you, Brother Tim. I want to thank you, Doc Freeman. Brittany, thank you so much for coming on this program this evening. Now, I was going to share a video with you at the end, but we are well over a time, so we'll do that next week. So no worries with that. I just want you to know next week our topic is Total Makeover Leadership Edition. Total Makeover Leadership Edition. So we invite you to come back here, same time, same place at 4 p.m. Once again, on behalf of the Hanson Place Youth Ministries, we thank you so much for making it out this evening to our topic, The Shift. And once again, big shout out and big thank you to our panelists for putting on giving us wonderful information. I don't want to say put on a wonderful show, because this is not just for entertainment. This is for movement and change. So I want to thank all of you for coming on this evening and making this a possibility. May God bless you. From my heart to yours, be safe, stay good until we meet again. God bless. Love you all.